Welcome everyone. Today we are going to paint this very simple, beginner-friendly winter scene. I was inspired to print this out and paint it today because we're nearing the end of winter here in Idaho and we didn't get a lot of snow. And I just love the look of this serene, simple, beautiful colored sky and then the quiet hillside. So we're going to paint this today. It's a very simple, small painting, which you can get done in a short period of time. And so just know that this is a beginner, simple project. And I'm going to paint in this new book that I got. I got it on Amazon. It's inexpensive. It's a watercolor kind of journal type book, spiral bound, and it also has a the paper is pretty good weight. It's not 100% cotton, but it has this scored edge where you can easily tear the pages out. They lay flat because it's spiral bound, and so I like that too. And so I'm going to start this today, and I'm not really going to start on the first page. I'm going to leave that as like a kind of like a intro page, and then so I'm not going to start on the back of that either. I'm going to start on the page after that. So that's where I'm going to put this as my first entry in this journal book. And so today I want to show you the supplies that I'm going to use. I use this Curate Gansei Tambi color watercolor set. It's made in Japan, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right. I'm probably totally annihilating that name. But anyway, it's a beautiful paint set. You can get it on Amazon. It's not a very high end, but it's not really super beginner. But there's a whole variety of beautiful colors, and the pigments are very vivid. So I really like this set a lot. I'm sure it will last me a long time also because the paint, and that's my puppy in the background if you can hear him whining a little bit. I got a new puppy named Ollie. So anyway, these colors are beautiful that I'm going to use in this project today. You can use whatever colors you want. Know that there is really no right or wrong way. Whenever you paint with me, I love people to be creative. So I'm going to use a very dark green here. You can see the colors on the left. A very dark green, a gray, and then this yellow, which is more of like a golden yellow. And I think it's good to go with more of a gold when you're looking at your yellows for this. Then I have a pink and then the cerulean blue. And so these colors, I'm going to be diluting them quite a bit, especially for the background. And that technique is called a wash, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. So I'm going ahead and spraying them, getting them ready for to be used. It's good to spray your water on them, just plain water, clean water, and just let them sit for a while before you start. And that way the paints are good and ready. You also want to have paper towels ready for underneath and to blot. I have some graphite paper here and a stylus because I am going to trace this, and it's 100% fine to do that. You might want to use tape to tape down the edges. I think it's a good idea. If you do, get painter's tape. Don't use regular masking tape because it will end up tearing your paper when you try to take it off. So you need to get painter's tape if you want to go ahead and tape it down. And so I'm going to tape off the edges, and you can see they have sharp edges on the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and tape it off. And I'll show you that in a minute too. Okay, so the brushes I'm going to use are, I think it's, number 2 and a number 5. The pink is the 2 and the green is the number 5. These are round brushes, and I'm just going to use these 2, the bigger one for the background wash and the smaller one for the detail work. I have a ceramic palette here. I like to use ceramic instead of plastic. I just feel like the water mixes better. And then I'm going to use a Micron number 2 pen to outline the hills. And I like to do detail work with a black pen, and then also to sign my work, which I always tell people, make sure to sign your work. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this. And it's so simple. You could easily probably hand draw this, but I like to always trace because I like to show beginners that it is perfectly fine to trace. You don't have to be an expert at drawing. You don't have to know how to draw at all, really, in order to watercolor paint. Now, I'm not going to bother taping this down because it's such a simple image, but I am going to trace it. So I will show you how I do that. And I'm mainly doing this so that the composition is correct and I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to think about where each brush stroke is going to go this way by tracing these lines. And really we just kind of want the basics in here. It doesn't have to be super detailed because we can do that with our paints. And then I'm just going to put 3 little lines here, and then you can see it's pretty basic. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that tape that I showed you and I'm going to mask off the 4 corners, or the 4 edges, because I want this to have a very sharp, clean edge on it, and I want it to look like the photo. Okay, so I have everything taped down here and I'm going to start painting. I'm going to start with this yellow, this beautiful gold, and I do have some paint in my palette here on the right already, but I'm going to add some more paint to it, and I like to make these washes very, very thin. So I recommend that you add a lot of water when you start using washes. And so I'm just going to start here at the top of these hills on the right hand side. And you can just paint like right over the tree. Don't even worry about it because that's going to be a much darker color. A good rule of thumb is to always start with your lightest colors in watercolor and go lighter than you think. You can always add more paint, but it's very hard to remove paint once you've made it too dark. So start really light and you can always add more layers, and you can just touch in a little bit of darker here and there. For these washes, you do need more water, and that's why I tape down the edges too, because the water will make your paper warp, and especially if you use a dryer. Now I'm just going to add some clear, plain water here, because the next color, the pink, I want to take that and I want to mix it again very thin, and I want to have it kind of run together with the yellow so that it's not this big line in between the two. Now, get a test piece of paper and test your paints often. I like this very watered down pink that I've created here, but I like to test just to make sure that it's the right shade, it's the right amount of water. Now, with watercolor, water is, of course, the most important thing, how much water you add. And that just comes with practice. So, add more water, add less water. This is why it's so great to have a journal where you can just create day by day. I've done this painting once before already, and I didn't like the way it turned out, so I'm doing it again right now. So I'm adding a lot of clear water also because I want this blue again at the top to be kind of melding into the pink. The 3 colors should just kind of go together. So making it very, very thin, again, very thin and watery. And yeah, just go ahead and go for it. There's really no right or wrong way. And even if you don't, like I said, you don't like these colors, maybe you want to try some purples, you can add other colors in. And again, you can see here I'm doing a very, very light wash. And then I'm going to go back and grab some little bit darker colors and add them in. And the only thing about inexpensive paper is the water does dry faster, and then if you have 100% cotton, more expensive paper, it doesn't dry as fast. So that's really one of the big differences. But I think you can get really great results with less expensive paper. You don't have to go and spend a ton of money. Watercolor painting is just so amazing in so many different ways. So I'm going to go back here, yeah, and just add a few more little bit darker shades, and then kind of start to blend them together so that there's no defining line between the different colors. And it's always fun to see in the end how your work turns out when you do this kind of blending. So I like that. And maybe I'll add a little bit more. Less is always more in watercolor. That's another good rule of thumb. And yeah, I think I'll add a little bit more darker blue here too. I really want this sky to be interesting. So just add a little bit more, and I want that nice sharp edge where I have it taped off. And you'll see when I remove the tape at the end what that ends up looking like. Okay, that looks good. And one thing you want to make sure that this is very, very dry before we move to the next step. So I'm going to use my heat gun to speed things up. You can use a hair dryer, or you can just simply wait until it's very dry. Okay, so this is nice and dry, and I'm going to go ahead and start getting the paint ready here for the tree. I'm going to use black and that very dark green. I think I might want to add some of this black to the green to make it even darker. I tested this a little bit earlier, and the green is pretty turquoise green, as you can see. It's pretty blue-green, and so I wanted it a lot darker to look almost black, but just to have like a slight tinge of green. So I'm going to take this black, and I'm just going to mix it together with that green, that blue-green, and get this very dark color. And I'm also going to switch to my very small brush, the pink one, which is the very fine line, very small. And before I start doing this tree, I'm just going to test on my paper and make sure it's the right amount of water, it's the right consistency. And, I'm just blotting off a little bit here. It's not on the camera, but I'm blotting off a little bit so there's not too much paint on my brush. And again, this just comes with practice. And I don't really care if this tree is perfectly straight. I kind of want it to be a little bit crooked looking because it is part of nature, and nature is never 100%. And so it makes it, I don't know, it's a little bit more whimsical too, I think, when things aren't perfectly done. And I always appreciate just a handmade look. So you're going to want to you're not going to want to press too hard, but the trick with a branch is to start out very thin at the tip and then press down a little bit as you go in towards the trunk. And some of these very small branches can just be kind of wispy, and they don't have to be any thicker. But the larger ones, I like to try to make them a little bit thicker when they get towards the trunk of the tree, because that's how trees are in nature. And again, no right or wrong way to do this. Just kind of add your little tiny branches here and there. And I did add in a few more pencil lines here to my image before I started painting. You might have noticed that. And again, you can trace. Tracing is, I don't know, it just makes it go a lot faster and easier. And even if you take a photograph outside of something, or any photograph that you've taken, you can trace the basic lines and paint it. And it doesn't have to be really realistic. It can be your own style, and that's something that I think you can work on. So I'm just going to paint some fine straight lines to start with these 3 little pine trees that are in the background here. And then to just add in little branches on each of them. And they kind of curve ever so slightly upward at the end. Keeping it very simple. And maybe adding a little bit more texture, darkness to the trunk of this large tree. Depends on the paint that you're using. And this looks pretty good. I think I will leave it at that. So the next thing that we're going to do is add some shadows to these hills. And I want this to be a very, very light gray. And so I'm just really watering down the black. And I'm making it so transparent that it's just going to be like almost like just water. But I want it like this. I want it to be very, very light. And when you have snow like this, it just adds more depth when you add these kind of shadows, and it still looks white. I mean, you can tell it's snow, but adding the shadows makes it so that, it actually looks like there's one hill and another hill and another hill. And you might have heard me say this in other videos. I haven't really done any super in-depth studies of light and shadow. A little trick that my son's girlfriend told me is to take your phone, turn on the flashlight with it, and then just hold it in front of an object, like say an apple on the table, or something that you can see where the shadows fall. And you could probably do it with any kind of light, but it's very effective for learning how light and shadows work together. But for the type of art that I do, it's kind of, I mean, it's so simple and basic, and I just, it makes me happy. I'm really not motivated so much to do very detailed, realistic type watercolor yet. Maybe I will evolve into that, but for now, these very simple images make me really happy. And so I'm kind of just going to go around the edges a little bit too, where the tape is, because I want a defined border to this finished project. And so I'm going to just do a little bit of blending, add a little bit more water. If you might have seen, I just added a very slight touch of blue. You might want to add a little more blue, and just go over any harsh edges with water and kind of just blend until it fades away into the white. Okay, so one of the last things I'm going to do now is take that micron pen, that very fine permanent ink pen. Make sure that you use permanent ink. There's a variety of different pens. I really like the micron. And I'm just going to define the tops of these hills. And this is called watercolor sketching. It almost makes it look like, instead of having pencil lines or tracing lines, like you had sketched this in pen and ink and then added the color to it. And it's a very forgiving and a very simple technique, but I feel like it really adds a lot to my finished work. So many times I will go in and I will add some lines and just be a very, very light touch, almost like you are creating a sketch. You don't really want to press down and make one big heavy thick line. You just want to make little kind of like brush strokes with the pen. And I'm just going to go in too and just give this tree a little bit more depth here and there. I wanted it to be just a little bit darker so that it stands out. And with any type of design, the contrast between black and white is always a good thing to add to your art. So if ever you feel like there's just something missing to this piece, I don't know what it is, maybe you just need to add some contrast. Sometimes I also use a white rollerball pen. In this particular project, we don't need to use that, but I will use it every now and then to add more white if I didn't leave enough white paper when I was painting. I'm just going to go a little bit over these little trees, just ever so slightly, just to add a little bit more depth. And just wherever you think you need a little bit heavier line, go ahead and add that. Sometimes when things dry, they look a little bit different than when they're wet. So I always take a look at the end of my project and see if there's anything I might want to add a finishing touch to. Okay, so this is almost done. And the last thing, I call it the unmasking, removing the tape and just looking at any last details. Is there anything you want to add? And then, of course, signing your work, which I always encourage people to sign their work. Now, look how this gave it a nice sharp edge. I like how when you add the tape, it does that. And I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. I hope you are too. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. And the last thing, I'm going to take a very fine 005 micron pen, and I like to just put my initials and the date, the year. I track my painting. I've been painting for years, and it's always fun and exciting to see how my work is evolving. So I just put my initials very, very lightly, again, very light touch. And there you go. That is the finished project. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. I'm creating new ones every week. And I would love to have you a part of my inner circle where we paint online together. And that is a super fun and relaxing way to enjoy time with other women. Okay, so we are done. And again, the finished product. You could use this as a card. You could just hang it up and enjoy it in your own home and just be proud of the work that you've done. And please join me. I record these every week, and I also have a live painting circle. So I would love for you to be part of that. Thank you so much again, and have a great rest of your day.